you?
Hi, good, thanks. Sorry I'm late.
No, don't be silly.
I'm still
Are
little
you
adjustment things
to do
with daylight
this?
savings.
With the phone.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yes.
I have a tripod. This is good.
Um,
Wait, now I'm just sideways.
That's...
I gotta put the... wait.
Hey, nice.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Maggie. And the next person we are announcing for the EJC is Maggie Rusak. Welcome to the podcast, Maggie.
Thank you. Money.
Okay, we are just going to get started straight away because this act that you're going to perform at the Gala, if I'm correct, is quite unique in many ways, and especially one way, I'd say, and that's the dress. So instead of you starting to talk about the act, we would love if you could talk about the dress and how you use it in the act.
Okay, well, the thing with the dress actually started because I never really wear dresses on stage because they do kind of restrict your juggling because they cover your legs, and I do a lot of foot juggling, obviously. So I kind of need to have access to like under and around my knees.
Yeah.
So I was never really on stage with a dress before. And at the time I was at Lido, which is a circus school in France. And there were a lot of guys doing juggling acts in dresses. I don't know why. It's a little bit of a cliche of the circus school. And so the initial idea was actually like, what if I do like an act in a dress where I'm a guy in a dress, but actually I'm not? And that was the initial idea. And it kind of went away from there. And then I think just because I'm such a juggler, I started from that idea of just seeing how it would affect my juggling to be wearing a dress, but then ended up very quickly juggling the dress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah,
is...
because we're seeing that you're doing throws with it, you're lifting it around your body, pulling your hands through. How was the creative process with learning to juggle with the dress? How has that been?
So what I tend to do when I'm working with an object, because I do like to work with objects in my juggling, is that I sort of look for vocabulary. So I will start to sort of categorize different movements or throws I can do with the object. So with the dress, for example, there might be a moment where I wrap it around my hand and then I let it unwrap. And so what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, so I have this idea of wrapping. Now I'm going to find all the different variations on wrapping that I can find with the dress. And then, for example, I also have bounces off of the fabric. I also have windows where I pass the ball through a window. So there's a lot of different sort of categorizations of movements or tricks with the dress. And then I'll just find as many variations as possible. And then later what I'll do is I'll get all that vocabulary and I'll write sequences with it. So there's a lot more vocabulary with the dress than what's in the act. And the hard part for me is then deciding what's interesting and what goes well together.
Yeah. The dress is obviously a dress, but the material is very important.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
The material of the dress, actually, it's a dress that a friend of mine got in a secondhand store in Italy. And I just borrowed it from her to do this act. And then I kind of accidentally made my whole act around it. And at a certain point, I was like, I can't give this back to her because now my whole act is based around it. And so there was a bit of back and forth with her because she also really liked the dress. And I ended up buying it off of her. But the issue is that when I do a research with like a very specific object, it can be very hard to change to a different similar version of that object. So I've already been trying to get some copies of the dress made in case it rips or it's, I've been using it for a couple of years now. It's getting a little bit worn around the edges. And it's been quite difficult to find exactly the right material for it because of the weight, because of how it floats, because of the transparency. And it's quite difficult to find exactly a fabric that's exactly equivalent, especially because when I'm looking in a fabric store, if I just touch a flat piece of fabric, it's very hard to tell how it will juggle until it
Yeah.
actually gets made. I've already tried it with where I had a prototype made, and I was like, seems great, fabric looks perfect. Put it on once it was actually made, and I was like, it's too heavy. The speed that the fabric falls is too fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of an issue. I need to find a very good costume maker if anyone knows one. I had this problem before with other objects too, when I've done other object research where I've been like, oh, okay, well, when this breaks, I don't have an act anymore. Because
what other objects could that be?
I had an act with like a little, you know how that sounds, like a little cart, where I wheeled in a little cart on stage, and it had drawers in the cart. I guess imagine like a kind of dining trolley or something. And I would wheel it in with balls on it, and then I would also do things where I would push it, and the drawers would slide open, and the balls would kind of fall in and out of the drawers.
Nice.
But
Wow.
like I tried to find exactly the same cart, because my cart started falling apart. It started getting because it was like a kind of IKEA thing that was put together, and I actually ended up taking it to like a welding place and getting the joints welded together because it was breaking, and I couldn't find another one.
That's hilarious. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm curious because Lewis and I, we thought about this theoretical question.
Mhm.
What if you had an unlimited amount of time and money?
Mm-hmm.
Would you change anything about the dress you now have?
Oh.
Or what would the perfect juggling dress be like?
I think that my dress is perfect because the act is made around it. Like I was saying, it's more that I adapt myself to the object when I'm doing the research with it, and the act gets built around it. So I wouldn't necessarily change it. I would just make it really nice. The same thing, but a bit nicer, because it's just getting a bit like raggedy right now. But if I had unlimited budget, I would love to just look into a whole bunch of different stuff with different clothes and different fabric, and have like a big fan and like big trailing pieces of fabric that blow in the wind. I don't know.
Wow.
I would love to look into that kind of stuff more. But yeah, like I said, I think it's really built around the object, so it's hard to then, even small adjustments can change a lot of things. Like
Yeah, I understand. And also, you talked about the vocabulary kind of the dress, and making categories or concepts in a way. And out of those categories or concepts, then you make tricks. And I'm curious, what part do you think is the most difficult? To come up with a completely new category, or to make tricks from a discovered category?
I think for me the hardest part is often sort of deciding what's interesting. Like I think I can like narrow in a little bit too much on an idea or too much on a category, and I get a little blocked in the details.
So that you make the categories too narrow? Is that
Maybe
not a problem for you? Or
maybe I can get too specific. I can get a little bit too fixed on one idea, and I think that I actually do the object research as a workshop sometimes. And what I really like to do with people is to get them to like go off and create some vocabulary with the object they found. It can be whatever. And I always get them to demonstrate the stupidest idea that they've had first, the one that they don't think works. And I feel like that can be really helpful for people as well, to sort of not get stuck on something and not get stuck on doing something cool.
Okay, let's get a little bit more into your act. Because you said before the conversation that this act that you're doing is also a part of a bigger 30-minute show, if I understood you correctly. So could you please tell a little bit both about your act, maybe a little bit about the show, what is the story, what's the name of the act, everything.
Okay, well the act is called "This Is Not a Joke, It's a Cry for Help." And it was a project I started as my third year graduation when I was in Lido. So the number with the dress is part of that whole 30-minute project.
Is it just a 30-minute project of you, or is it a group of people?
Well, it's complicated because there is my 30-minute project, but I'm right now in residency with a colleague of mine, Ivy Blake, and she's a tightwire artist. And she also has a 30-minute project, so we're kind of in the process of making what we're calling a diptych show.
Cool.
So it's not exactly a duo because we're not spending a lot of time on stage together interacting, but we have these two projects that have quite a lot of themes in common and sort of like we thematically cross paths a bit in our two acts. And so we're making a show where we would like the two projects to be speaking together, but a little bit more like what a diptych is when you go to an art gallery and there's two pieces that are next to each other, two paintings that are next to each other, and they often kind of have different themes that when you look back from one to another, you go, oh, okay, yeah, I see that. I see what this painting is saying about this one.
Ah, cool.
Anyway, that's what we're aiming for, and we're in residency for that right now, and that's going to be more like an hour-long show. And then the shorter version of the project is just me.
Okay, cool. Wow.
But yeah, this is not a joke. This is the cry for help.
Yes.
Please tell us a little bit more about the title and how we can see this title throughout your act.
Well, the character that I'm playing in the show and in the act is like a little bit of a diva, like a little bit of a what about me kind of character. And you'll see that there's kind of a bit of religious imagery that comes through in the act as well. It's like a bit of a nun, there's a bit of praying and this kind of thing. And it's actually, the character is kind of someone who throughout the project has been looking for answers to the question of what is my problem and why am I like this? But she's very sort of demanding and very like, I need someone to give me the answer to this problem that is external to me, tell me what it is. And the process of the development of the character through the show is sort of the realization of like, oh, this is kind of a me problem. But she goes from in the beginning of the project, she's going to the doctor and the psychologist and the psychiatrist and the hospital, and then at the end of the show, it sort of escalates. At the end of the show, she's asking God, oh, like, why am I like this? And at the end, in the end, there's no answer. In the end, the answer is still nothing. There's no one reason why she is like this. But it's a lot of fun to sort of play this character. It's a little bit bratty or like a little bit of a whinger, because you don't let yourself be whiny most of the time, or you don't want to be annoying. And she's a little bit like, yeah, what about me? Think about me. I'm here. Look at me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah. It's a lot behind this, and also I've at least I think I've seen the act twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Was it in Lublin and also at the Norwegian Juggling Convention? At the
I
EJC
think so.
in Lublin a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I hope it all makes sense when it's just the juggling act, because like I said, there is a lot behind it, and I think that sort of reads when it's just the juggling act by itself. I think the character is still there, and I think people get that something's going on, but there's a little bit less of this direct kind of narrative, or I don't know if it's a narrative, but I do, like in the longer project, I do speak, and there is like a theatrical element. Yeah.
Have you ever performed the full thing at a juggling convention?
I have not. I've thought about it, but I normally get just a 10-minute slot, so I don't have time to do the 30 minutes. And I do wonder with the theatrical part how that would go down. And I play it differently depending on the context, because I do think of the show as being sort of modular. Okay. And when I just play the juggling act, I do play it differently. Or when I play it for kids, I do play it differently. Like I don't change the act, but I put sort of emphasis on different parts of the act, or I play up different parts depending on who the audience is. So
yeah, because I was thinking about asking about the theatrical part of it.
Yes.
Because it's quite playful. You said she's kind of a diva and all of these things. How do you find, what should I say, how is it to act on the stage while you're juggling? Have you done it a lot before? How is that experience for you to kind of be this character?
For me, it's really fun. It's really fun, and I really love connecting to the audience a bit and having those letting myself have those more clown or more theatrical moments where I also, as a juggler, let myself be on stage and not be juggling all the time. Like there's moments where I'm like, okay, I don't have to sort of like justify the fact that I'm here by doing tricks constantly. Like people also just want to connect with me while I'm on stage. And that aspect of it I really enjoy. I have a lot of fun with. But the formation that I did, the school that I did, Lido, is also very sort of we do a lot of clown, we do a lot of theater, so it is something that I was part of my circus training. Yeah. But it's hard to. I also kind of was a question when I was making the project about the text and about the theater stuff, because I think it's quite hard to juggle and talk at the same time. But I was also thinking with the longer project, oh, okay, well, I have these bits where I talk, and then I have these bits where I do circus, and they're not really mixed together. And in the end, I decided that was better for me to be able to do both fully separately, rather than trying to mix them together too much. But it can also work. I think it's just a different skill set to also talk and juggle, and to get the rhythm right, to get the back and forth between the juggling and the talking. Like it's very
difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I was thinking about I Was Told by Catherine Wagner.
That
great
show.
Kind of like that. Yeah, mixing them together. You've had this act for some years now. I'm not sure exactly how many years, but has anything changed with the act over the years since, okay, now it's finished until today? Has anything changed in between?
I think it's been I probably started the act maybe 3 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, because I think I did a very early prototype in my second year of Lido. And then I came back to the act because I was just asking people around me what I'd already done they thought was interesting that I could do more of for my third year project. But I think the finished version is maybe 2 years old. And it's been pretty stable. Like it's been
more stable than the character you're playing in a way.
Yes. Yeah. I tend to be a juggler who writes a lot, as in like it's very choreographed, and I do tend to stick with that. Like at some moments I'm like, oh, I would like to go back and I think the quality of movement has become more refined, and there's some parts that I've gone back on and been like, okay, how can I make this more clear, or make this movement with my hand more clear? And that I'm still doing, but in terms of the choreography, it's pretty much the same. And once I got like a finished product like that, I do have a bit of a hard time going back and sort of breaking it to make parts of it better. Like once it's a finished object, I do tend to keep it a bit the same.
I get you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
I've got one question. I don't know if there's going to be an answer to it though.
Yeah.
Do you know when you mentioned different concepts? So like, for example, the window and stuff. Is there any concept that you've thought of since you've kind of finalised the act that you want to dive into that you haven't yet? Or is it a secret?
Oh, let me think about that. I mean, there's some parts that I've developed on less. Like there's one part of the act where I tuck the dress into my pants, and I do sort of a bit where I have a little cape behind me, and that could have explored more. There's a transparency of the dress, like you can kind of see through it. I don't know. There's lots of stuff.
Yeah.
With lighting and such.
With lighting or even projections on the dress or like that kind of thing. Cool. There's also a bunch of tricks that I just can't do consistently enough to put them on stage. There's a great one where I can put the dress up like this above my head, so there's a piece of fabric between my two hands, and then it creates kind of like a bowl shape or like and I can kick a ball up and have it roll around the back of my hands and then back down again. So, like,
that's cool.
And then catch it back on my foot again, but it doesn't work every time, so I'm not putting that on stage yet. But there's a lot of stuff like that where I'm like, oh, this is cool, but it doesn't work every time. So
that's juggling.
But yeah, sorry, because I think it's I think yes is the answer to your question, but I think I'm having a hard time giving specific examples because I've spent so much time with it. I've gone in so many different directions, and I'm like, oh yeah, wow, there was. But I would say that when I make an act, if I make this kind of vocabulary, like 10% of it goes in the act, and 90% of it, because it's about choosing what serves the act for me and what serves the situation, and not just putting everything that I can do and everything that I know in.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of trimming, and I do then have all this stuff on the side, all this other 90% of the vocab where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know if that's ever gonna get used or. But I think that's important as well for juggling, and something I've been thinking about a lot is sort of the density of juggling, or making things more readable, and not just getting excited and being like, I can do this, I need to put everything I can do and show everyone everything I can do in my acts, and to be a little bit more precise about why I'm choosing this to go in there, what exactly, how the audience is going to read that, whether they're going to understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Holding their hand a little bit, like introducing concepts, being like, okay, now I've got the dress. Now I'm going to just pass the ball through the dress, and then building on the complexity as I go on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're really reflected and analytical about all of your juggling, I feel like, and it's really interesting to hear about. But we soon have to wrap up the interview now. But I really want to ask the question: how do you think it's going to feel like for you to stand on one of the biggest juggling stages of all, the Gala Show?
I'm for sure going to be nervous, because I'm always nervous. I think for me, maybe this will make people feel better, but for me, every time before I go on stage, like when I'm backstage right behind the curtain, just before I'm about to go on stage, I feel like, why am I doing this? Why have I chosen this? Like, why did I choose this career path? I could have done anything, and I'm here, and I have a real moment of panic, but I have enough experience to know that passes, and I know that when I get out on stage and when I make a connection with the audience, I feel that kind of fades away. I generally don't feel so nervous once I actually start the act, and once I get sort of in the flow of something that I know really well. It's always difficult juggling for jugglers. It's always a little stressful juggling for jugglers, and you get a little bit more worried about, I don't know, because they know, they're not plebs, they know what you're doing, they know so I think it would be a lot of fun. It's always a fun act. And also the thing about the act is that even when it's a bit of a disaster, like even times where I've just dropped balls everywhere and it's just been terrible, it's still a lot of fun because of the character that I have. And I know that if I kind of lean into the comedic parts of it, even if it's a bit of a disaster, it still works out. I did one show at the Polish juggling convention where I hadn't really tested the act outside maybe as much as I should have. And that day there was like really hectic wind.
Okay.
It was really windy. And so there were all these people coming to watch me, and I just kind of, most of the tricks I couldn't do because my dress was like blowing into my face and behind me. But everyone could see what was happening. Everyone was really empathetic with me, and it ended up being hilarious because nothing was working. So, long story short, I'm really excited to be there and to share the act and to connect with everyone in the audience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We are excited as well. The best of luck to you. We're sure that it's going to be great for us and all the other people to watch as well. Thank you so much for joining this interview. And please finish up like this.